Welcome to Unconversations, a speaker series highlighting and promoting unconventionally excellent global leaders who are taking bold, unconventional steps to stand out in their lives and companies. I'm Dr. Allison Schmidt, and I'm excited to welcome Veronica Orlovo to have an unconventional conversation. Thank you so much for joining me, Veronica. I am so thrilled to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm also extremely thrilled and I love getting to know you. So, yeah,
Oh,
thank you so much.
Same here. Veronica is a dreamer and an optimist engineer. She's the founder and CEO of Didimo with 20 plus years of experience in research and development on the facial technology. Fascinated by the many ways in which people communicate, learn, and share knowledge, she set out to discover a new way to interact and instill trust and empathy in the digital era. Veronica has a PhD in computer graphics and is a professor at Porto University. She has been a featured speaker at TEDx, SIGGRAPH, and the GamesBeat Summit. She is the SIGGRAPH General Submissions Chair for 2025 and the member of the grand jury. She continues to inspire the next generation of innovators as a TEDx ambassador and mentor for women in technology in multiple programs in Europe. Veronica has won multiple awards, such as the Women Who Tech Award, the IBM Scientific Award, Entrepreneur of the Year, European Women Innovators Award, EY Winning Women Award, and was part of the Deep Tech Tech Tour program. She has been featured in Forbes, the New York Times, and Animation Magazine, to name a few. While her inventions have been used by Universal Studios, Sony, Colossal Order, Microsoft, and Amazon, Veronica strongly believes everyone should have access to education by creating a safe digital future for her children and all kids around the world. Veronica, thank you so much again for joining me. That is quite an impressive resume. And you certainly got your technology into some very, very big companies.
Yes, yeah, now that you read my whole CV, I get all blushing, you never know how much you've done until someone actually puts it out there. And then you realize how old I am, right? If I've done so much.
Well, I will tell you, I'm so excited to one talk with you because you are definitely one of my global leaders. And Veronica, where are you located for
I'm
our
currently
listeners?
Currently, I'm located in Portugal. I'm originally from Argentina, and but I live in a very tiny fisherman town by the beach in the north of Portugal, in the north of Porto. So, yeah, I'm very
That is
fortunate.
beautiful. And you are doing some, you are disrupting the technology world in a small fisherman town. So when someone says, I can't do big things because of where I live, you're definitely a testament of, yes, you can. So,
Yes, absolutely. That's what everyone says, and you're so fortunate. It's like, yeah, I only need an airport 7 minutes away. So,
yeah. Well, you and I have had some amazing conversations prior to this podcast, and I feel like I have gotten to know you, and that we have built a very special relationship. And I'm just excited to share you to even more now to the rest of the world through this podcast. And you and I talked about prior, and I like doing this exercise because it helps to give our listeners and viewers an opportunity to get to know the speakers on a more intimate level. And I asked you to think of three words that begin with "un," and what first, if you could talk about what that process was like for you, because when I asked that question to other speakers, they've had very different responses. And secondly, if you could also talk about each of those words individually, whatever order you choose, and what they mean to you, and how they serve you now, or maybe how they served you before and they actually serve you even more now as you built your company, your very successful company, Didimo. Do you mind sharing those with us,
No,
and your
absolutely.
process?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first, I thought it was a brilliant idea, just to say, okay, think of annuals, which I've never done before. And English is not my first language, so therefore I was struggling to choose words that can have a more deeper of a meaning, right? So what I've done is I actually looked into my own self, my own values, what things are important for me, what defines me today, which definitely is different from what defines me 20 years ago, right? So it was kind of like going back in time and doing a self reflection in an unconventional way, right? So
Yes.
so it was the process in itself was straightforward into looking deep into me and which were the values, and then I collected a few of these words and I looked up into the dictionary and tried to see, okay, what do actually these meanings, which are the words that could actually best represent the meaning of the values that I was looking for.
No,
So
just but before you go into those words, thank you for explain that uh from a language, the words that you chose, do they have similar meaning in your country?
um mm, no. No. So you mean the linguistic bit, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, no, the linguistic bit, no, not really, except one maybe, but the other two, no, 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 no. So it was a bit of a tough way to find the right words. So it was yeah, deepening myself into the English language as well. So it was another
Oh,
opportunity. It was another opportunity.
wonderful.
Yeah.
That I even appreciate you more going through that exercise. What's the first word would you like to start with?
So the first one, it's unyielding. So for me, unyielding really means, reflecting all the thinking bold, thinking big, uh, daring in nature. So it's attached to the description of my personal purpose. So it really is big, bold, you know, daring ideas. Like if you don't think big and if you don't think bold, then your dreams might fall flat. So for me, that one is it's in the past few years has been kind of like a driving force. Because when you're building a business, it's just so difficult every day that you have to have a purpose and you have to have a very big dream and bold idea with passion that on those hard moments, you will continue, right? So there's no another option. You have to continue because otherwise your dream will never come true. So unyielding for me is, putting it all together. And something that's attached to it is a couple of years ago, I was at an event with someone that became a very dear friend now. And she kept on saying, Veronica, you have such a great ideas. You have such great heart. You just need to think bigger and you need to think bigger and you need to think bigger. Um, and so it kept me, it just made me think that I needed to revisit how big and how far we could go, right? So yeah, so unyielding pretty much reflects that boldness of
Yeah,
everything
and
I do.
I appreciate you saying that because I want to tell you you were a bit of an inspiration for me. I had my business for 20 years and I rebranded March of last year, which is the company is called Unconvention, as you know. And last year was a lot for me one, launching the company, and also working with clients, and then the podcast launched in September, and I've had just such positive turnout in regards to the podcast. And you were such an inspiration for me, because this week when you said unyielding, I actually looked it up myself. And uh, January for me was thinking really big. And I thought about this even in December. And so when you mentioned unyielding and you talked about your story, I was having my own uh, CEO and leadership moment of, yeah, I want to surround myself with people that think really big and have a drive. So I just want to let you know that you are an
Thank
inspiration
you.
to me. So that word really resonated with me, and so I appreciate you bringing up that example for
Thank you.
unyielding. Yes, you're
Thank you.
welcome. And you had a second
Yes.
one.
Yes. So they kind of like go kind of like a little bit on cascade just to represent the way I see myself. So the other one is unselfish, right? Is about this. The reason I choose unselfish is because in my life I've been extremely fortunate. So many people helping me in many areas of our lives. So it can be personal, it can be in the education space when we're learning, work wise, building the business. Like so many people helped me in a completely unselfish way. So I think um, giving forward is a key element of never really expecting, not doing something because someone has helped you. It's just paying it forward, doing it for someone else, right? It's having that very kind mindset, that natural desire to help. Because if you just help someone, you know, someone is gonna bring back that kindness to someone else. So it's about spreading kindness in a organic way. So I think if we go in life being unselfish, and kind, just things just happen, you know.
Does
So
that go along with where when you and I were talking, you were like giving first and going forward? That does that sort of go together for you when you talk about being unselfish?
absolutely. And I can just share two stories
Please.
where I was the recipient of that giving first, giving forward. So the least I can do is mimic that same behavior that someone has taught me by their actions. So one was when I was 18 years old. So I finished high school when I was end of 17 years old in the US. So I was in Kansas City for a year,
Oh, wow.
living with a family. So I was an AFS student, so I lived for a year with a family in a period of time that there was no internet, no mobile phones, no Wikipedia, no Google, no nothing, right? So no connection with my home back in Argentina. And so when I came back, I had finished high school before all my friends. So I still had like 8 or 9 months before I would go to college. So I wanted to start working, and I did try the McDonald's, the Dunkin' Donuts. I was like, oh, I just cannot do that. If I'm gonna study engineering, I just want to work at IBM, right?
You were
So
getting the full American experience.
I was I didn't want to work in. I mean, nothing wrong with McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts,
Yeah.
but I just didn't. If I was gonna
Your
study,
passion was not there.
was not, no. So I was like, okay, I want to work at IBM if I'm gonna be a software engineer. So very long story short, like I could absolutely not. I had no experience. So everyone at IBM, after I managed to get to the head of human resources and I convinced him that I was worth of a job interview, he then started me sending to many job interviews where everyone was saying no, 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 you have no experience, you don't know, you just only speak English, not even technical, so not good for IBM either. So I just can't imagine, like, you just can't imagine how many no's I have received, but I never gave up. until someone gave me that opportunity. And I became the first employee for the manager for services back in IBM Argentina.
Wow.
Um, and for all my college degree, I would work during the day and then I would study at night software engineering. So that was what, more than 30 years ago, right? And because of that job, I've never had to look for a job ever again. When I finished when I was 22, I had 5 years of experience. I've graduated from US university because I did another exchange program. And when I came back from the US, I had other jobs. I could either go back to IBM, but I had other jobs offers, which I accepted. Never ever again I had. So it really paid off. But all that happened because one person gave me an opportunity. So 30 years later, through Didimo, we created a program that is called Paper Wings, where we pay college degrees to people that cannot afford it, and then we give paid internships during the summer at the company to students that are still in year one. So, it took me 30 years to give back or give forward something that someone has done for me, right? So it wasn't immediate, but I truly believe that if I've done this for these girls, then maybe 10 years later, 5 or 30, they will do something great or greater than them. And, the world will be better because one person did something good. So, it's related with the unselfish because, it's your kindness will continue into someone else. So that's one and how it turned out. And then the other one was when we started Didimo. So I was also, after many interviews, we were accepted to be part of Techstars London, which is a big accelerator program. Kind of like there's one of the biggest. You have Y Combinator in California, and then you have Techstars, which started in Boulder. So they had Techstars London, and from over, I think it was like 1,200 applications, they've selected 11 companies, and we were one of the fortunate ones being selected. And
Wow.
I could never forget, yeah, their hashtag is give first. The first thing they say when you join the program is your 11 companies, you, if someone asks you for something, you stop what you're doing and you help that person. And that just resonated so deeply that I just felt like at home because that's exactly how I build up my research lab and everything. So the unselfish is just to inspire others to do more for other people. There is a caveat though in this that I there's always a caveat,
There's
right?
always a
There's
caveat.
always a caveat that I had to learn the hard way, which is to put boundaries, right? Because you have to know who you are giving to. Is that person capable of receiving or not? Because otherwise you could drown. But we can chat about that if you find it interesting. So there's a lot of little things that can go with the concept of unselfish that can make you better, more productive, and at the end of the day, feeling fulfilled, right? So,
And I would have to agree with you so much on that because I had to learn. I have always thought of others and helping others sometimes before even myself. And I agree with you that that can be a drowning experience. And it's also taking away from the work that I want to put out into the world. And also it can also be a very draining experience if you're not careful and don't put those boundaries. And that's sort of how I came up with one of my unwords, which was unapologetic.
oh,
And
love it.
and that's how I came up with one of mine, that it wasn't, it's not that I take that word lightly, that I don't say sorry if I, make someone upset or whatever. But unapologetic is really putting me first in a healthy in a mentally healthy way. So I can be the best person I can be, not only for myself, but for my family, for my clients, and also for my company. So I can really relate to what you're saying in regards to boundaries. And that was a very uh, big leadership word and an empowering word for me. So I appreciate your stories. And your third one,
So the third one is
I
I
love
should
this one too.
I should have realized it, but I mean it's unconventional, right?
Yeah.
So so it's yeah, I only realized it when we were talking about the words. I was like, oh wow, there's a similarity here. So
That was our connection word
I
to
know,
each
I know,
other.
I know, yeah, I know. So the unconventional for me is really just kind of like highlighting all the inner creativity, the open mindset that we have in order to create and explore completely new perspective. So for me, the unconventional, it brings that other side of my very analytical and mathematical way of thinking, which sometimes I think I am more of the unconventional and I'm more of the creative than the math person behind it, even though I studied math. So, so yeah, I think we need to be creative in order to innovate. We need to be creative to find solution to problems that no other people can't, are not even thinking about it. So hard problems actually are the combination of this creative mindset, curiosity, um, always never being afraid of asking the silly question in the room.
Yes.
So yeah, so the unconventional is like the being different, always trying to fit in. So um, yeah, it's just bringing that creativity into scenario, I would say. Yeah.
Well,
I
I think that's great. And go ahead. Go ahead. Finish that
I
thought,
was just
please.
gonna, I was just gonna say, it just for me, maybe it sounds crazy, but it just brings freedom. So being unconventional, it represents freedom. If I would say one word, that would be a synonym. Synonym, you say? Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm glad I'm glad I stopped because I'm really happy you said that, because that was one of the words when I was really thinking about my company brand, and what I wanted to inspire with my brand going out, inspire in my clients and partnerships and everything that I touch is I agree with you on that word freedom, because as I went through that hard process when you're thinking about what's the name of my company, and how do I send something exciting out to the world, and I it provided me a sense of freedom when I used one of my unwords, which was unconventional, where I'm going to go out and I'm going to be unapologetic and I'm going to do the work that I want to do. I feel that there's a gap in the market which is where I feel myself and my company fits into, and that's a freeing
Mm.
place to be. So I'm happy that you brought that up, because I feel a very similar way. And what I think is a great transition, thank you very much for sharing your unwords with us. Uh, you provided me an awesome, awesome title for our podcast. And the title is Living Between Worlds: The Misfits Shift from Extrovert to Introvert. And I think that is a perfect title and segue to go into your story, because you're in a unique field, and especially a unique field as a woman, and a unique field too, that you're, as we said, in a fisherman's town, being a disruptor and bringing your company and your inventions to huge companies, huge companies, and the impact that your company is doing out into the world. And I want to read this quote because I want to have it sort of resonate in the viewers and the listeners as you're telling your journey. But you said something really impactful to me. And you said, I envision a world where technology not only retains humanity, but enhances it. And first of all, I think that's beautiful. But second of all, we live in a world, a very fast paced world. We live in a world where there's AI experiences. We're in a world where people can be transported into a virtual world. And how did you become within your journey a trailblazer? So wherever you would like to start, I we are ready and willing to listen because it's incredible. It's really incredible.
Well, thank you so much. And yes, that sentence is a driving path, kind of like a North Star, quote, something that I wrote long ago that makes sure that whichever decision I make, I have to be faithful to, enhancing humanity through technology. Um, so it has many implications. The first one is being ethically responsible by everything we build, which, there's no GDPR, there's no law or procedures. Of course, the law is there just to protect people. But at the end of the day, we have a human responsibility for every decision that we make. We make sure that is humanly correct, right? So even if we forget about how the law is represented, every decision we make, and I'll repeat it again, we just gotta be responsible of what we're doing and the impact of our decisions. So I try to instill that all through
And
my,
Veronica, can you
yeah.
talk a little bit? Can you talk about like an example of that? Because I'm sure your example will also clarify how uh, Didimo, with your technology and what you bring out to the world, how that kind of connects with one another.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for asking. Yeah, let's just make a bit of context. So
Yeah, please. Thank you.
at Didimo, and then I'll tell how it started because it's really deep into me. It was a big aha moment. So at Didimo, what we do is we create digital 3D characters, digital humans, avatars. You can name them however you want. So we build your 3D digital identity to put inside a virtual world. So we're focusing on gaming mainly because the games are much more than just what people think is just like Pac-Man or Roblox or Minecraft, right? So today, a game
My
is a
my game was Galaxy.
galaxy. There we go. Space invaders. We are,
I think I
but
just dated myself, but
so so today, we're building virtual experiences everywhere and things get gamified more and more. So at Didimo, we create all the characters, all the garments, everything that you would put inside a virtual experience. So if you need to populate a stadium, you need to put characters in it. If you need to populate a city, like the game we did for City Skyline, you need to put characters in it. If you want to do a fantastic world, you need to put creatures, and each person will be represented by it. And what I always wanted to do is bring diversity and uniqueness into those virtual worlds, right? So it's a big responsibility because at the end of the day, it's the identity of the person that goes inside that virtual experience. So that's what we do. We do at Didimo. We pretty much automated the process. So in like a minute, you can get thousands of characters created. Something that before it would take you, months or years. Even though technology advances, it's still very hard. So yeah, so it's a very technical solution where we help studios to populate virtual worlds really fast, high with high quality, decreasing costs, and in a much more efficient way. Hopefully, it wasn't too techy what I
No,
just
I
said.
know, I know. I loved it. You brought up something really interesting, and this is a really hot topic here in the states with a lot of companies removing DEI programs and things of that nature. Uh, and how does that social responsibility and with your leadership uh, uh, focus on bringing diversity into your inventions for companies?
Yeah, so one thing is we build the software, so we own every single line of code. So by owning every single line of code, we don't use any data coming from the internet or from and other customers. So what we do is we grab the information. So let's imagine that we have a contract with City Skyline. I can talk about this because it's public. So they own all the characters they've created. We are just the enabler to create the diversity. But usually the company, the artist, the user is the one that fits the system with their information, and what we do is we create infinite variations of that information. So the ownership of the data, it's always defined by our customer, and the specifications, the art style, everything is defined by them. So we are an enabler to scale whatever they have created. So let's say a customer creates one character, we can create thousands out of it, and that's it. Sounds simple.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
I'm
was like,
gonna
yeah,
do that app. I'm
like,
gonna do
yeah.
that after the podcast. That sounds simple enough to me.
Just yeah, just
That's it.
8 years building the company and 20 doing research, right? Yeah.
Right. Exactly. No, that is amazing. That is amazing. I appreciate you kind of giving some context of your company and what your company provides. I wanted you to share how you came up with the name of
Yeah.
Didimo,
So,
because
yes.
I think that was a very great story, because I think it really speaks to uh, the human, and the responsibility of how you want your company to be perceived.
Yes, so we came up with the Didimo. So
Yeah.
Didimo means digital twin in Greek. So yeah, I spend quite a lot of time trying to find a word that can show how we're doing an extension of ourselves. And I did look in some Argentinian dialect, but I couldn't find any. And I looked in Latin, and then I just came up with Didimo, which is Greek, and it means your twin brother. So it's kind of like an extension of you in that digital world. So yeah, so that's how it came up.
That's beautiful. I'm glad I'm happy that you shared that, because I think that absolutely represents that name for your company is perfect. It's perfect. And the meaning behind it, I think, is so great. Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to also talk with you about the misfit shift from extrovert to introvert. And
Mm.
if you can talk about why that uh, why that describes your journey from where you came to where you incredibly are now, and
Yeah.
what the misfit and the extrovert and introvert, what specifically within your journey, uh, so our listeners can kind of understand, because someone could read, hear that and go, a misfit, wow.
Yeah.
And you are not a if you were to look up what a gamer person would possibly look like, and the face behind your company, they would probably go, "What? Are
Yeah,
you sure this company and this CEO are one and the same people?" So
yeah.
I would love for you to talk about that.
Yes. So, I mean, I think since I was very young, I always felt that um, I wasn't always in the right place. So I was always kind of like trying to break the rules. I was always trying to do things differently. Every time someone would say, you just can't do that, it just encouraged me to do more. So um, I would always try to adapt to the system, but could never really adapt. I was always challenging the rules, right? So since young, I was, yeah, I think it was there, but I didn't realize it, right? And I didn't even realize it until recently, I would say. Um, since I started thinking that I was like, I really do feel like I'm misfit. It's because this being this misfit by assuming it's just frees me up to own who I truly am and to own that I can do hard things and I can overcome whichever challenge is put in front of me because I'm just not afraid of it, right? Because I have no fear by default, and we can chat about that also if you want.
Yes,
So,
please.
but the misfit was at school, was at university, was like I would work at IBM and I would not be able to walk in through the main door or get out of the main door because I would arrive rollerblading 30 years ago in a city, rollerblading between big buses and crazy drivers. Who would have thought that? And if my boss would say they have a cocktail, they would have to call to find a way to reach out to me because otherwise I would arrive with my jeans, right? So so it's like it's interesting because since I start feeling just like I gotta own that I'm a misfit. I start looking back, and that's what makes me feel that I am special to me, right? Not to anyone else, just to me. So it freed me up. And the same was, I teach at the university and I built this research lab, huge research lab. And I was always trying to bring people in, open um, uh, all our innovations to everyone at the university. And then people was like, why are you sharing so much? And I was like, that's how we should do it, right? So I always, either I landed in the wrong places or with the wrong people. Um, and then slowly I started finding my way. And what happened? It's like you gotta hit your head against the wall 100 times or 200 times or 1,000 if necessary until you realize that something needs to change, right? So um, I had my research lab and I was doing a ton of innovations over 10 years. I got tons of scholarship for students. And I felt like, what? Things are being misused, not value. And I was giving, 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 but things were getting nowhere. And I was an extrovert, right? I am an extrovert by nature, but I realized I needed to close down in order to preserve me, which is kind of like
Mm.
unfair if you think about it, right? Like if my nature is I want to help this, I want to help that. One year I wrote like more than 7 scholarship for students that got granted, right, by the national agency. And then you see that it gets nowhere or that you gave, and then people misuse it, right? So I started locking down. I started stop doing. I started shutting down. I started making all my research smaller. I to the point that I was like, I don't want to do these anymore, and I decided no more research lab. I'm just going to focus on my own research, just myself. So I went from huge to really shutting down, and not just at my research, but also on the personal level. Oh no, I shared with you when we were chatting, like on October 15 of many years ago, like 10 years ago, you know, I decided to eliminate all the toxic people out of my life, right? And then like loneliness comes in, but it's like you gotta really hit low, and I shut it down completely because, I was just feeling that, not loved, I would say, not enough, and that's the foundation of, when we are born, we want to feel that I'm enough. I want to feel that I am loved, right?
Yeah,
And I
that's
wasn't,
definitely human nature for sure.
and we are born to be connected on top of it, and we want to be part of a tribe. So all those four things were like,
You shut all that down.
I was like, we're done, you know?
Yes,
So,
yes.
so suddenly, you are this extrovert person that loves social life and love doing and giving and sharing, and you're like, boom, not anymore. And loneliness hates in,
Mm.
right? For a long time until suddenly, and I don't even know how, you start opening out a little, just a little, and you put your boundary, like what I can control is my own decisions. That's it. It's my choice. And you put a boundary around my inner circle that it was like me, just like this, right? and and then you suddenly, because you let one person in, right? And you're like thinking about it. And then you realize that person is cool and it brings, goodness into your life. Then you meet others and you're like, no, this is not good. So you just keep on your circle. And then slowly, like good people that start coming into your life bring other good people and other good people. And so great things start happening because I learned how to put that boundary. But I lost my natural extrovert um, nature.
Mm.
So it's like you're a little bit injured, I would say, because you're afraid that, you get injured again. So now I carefully decide when I show up, right? Um, uh, because and what it helped me understand that I need to show up, it's mostly for my kids because I'm an example to them, right?
Of course.
So I cannot shut down because then what I'm teaching them is that, oh, you're only safe if you're alone, which is not true. So I'm so fortunate and grateful because the people I end up meeting in the past, I would say not too much, like 5, 6 years ago, I have such a healthy group, community, um, people where I feel safe that I can show up and I can be that extrovert in that place. But in others, I just more reserved. So I kind of learn where my boundaries goes. I learn to give my time to those that are ready to listen, to receive, and I am a mentor as much as I am a mentee from others, right? So it's just beautiful when you learn all this discovery. I wish I would have had it like 30 years ago, but
Me too. Me too. I wish it wasn't until I got into my early 50s to finally understand that lesson. But
yeah,
I'm so happy you shared that because people would say to me that I am absolutely an extrovert, and I can play the role, like you said, when the role needs to be played.
yeah,
And I will say there was a certain time in my life that I went through a very similar process. So I take your lesson and journey that you went through, and that is very similar to what I went through as well. and I am very I would say I'm both. I'm an extrovert where I need to.
Yeah,
I don't have to show up to every business and personal party, if you will, and I don't have to meet with everybody if I don't feel and it's okay.
yeah,
And so I agree with you so wholeheartedly, which has made my personal and my professional. And I take what you said and I apply those principles not only in my personal life and in my business life. And it's not an easy thing to do, in my
no,
opinion. It's a really hard, and it's something I feel that I have to practice every day. And I feel that I need to listen to even as a leader and a mentor. I have to listen to my heart. I have to listen to my gut, and I have to listen to what goes in this crazy mind of mine, and making sure that those three things are in line,
yeah,
to make sure that I'm making the best informed decision I possibly can. Uh,
yeah,
and and I think your misfit really resonated me when you and I talked about that, because I use misfit with unconventional as well, and people tend to look at people that are unconventional or misfits as they're weird or they're outcasts, and there's negative words that get connected to misfit or being unconventional. And hearing your just you talk about that, in my opinion, I feel like you brought power to it, empowerment to it.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's positive. It's absolutely a positive thing because it gives you, as you say, the power of creating what no one had the courage to do before. So I'm thankful to have realized that that is a superpower at the end of the day. Is because I have the courage to do what others don't. And I continue, you never stop. I don't know if I've shared, but one of the, because it aligns with my three words, unyielding, unselfish, and unconventional, is last June with a group of amazing women, we climbed Kilimanjaro.
Oh,
And
let me know next time you do that. That is
yeah,
on my bucket list.
yeah, and I want to go again.
Hmm,
So, so that's for sure. And
perfect.
and uh, and you realize then when not everyone will do that, right? And what it was important, it wasn't getting to the summit; it was the journey towards getting there. And the fact that I had the courage to eliminate all the toxic people in my life, that meant that I did not wasted any more energy on situations, conversations, moments with, people, situations, and elements that will not bring you anything, right? And any gratification in life. It took me to meet all these amazing women a couple of years later with whom we bond for life. And these are all incredible CEOs that have had even harder lives than I did, changing the world in a way we cannot even imagine. So having the privilege of climb a mountain 9 days with these amazing women all sharing deep stories of what make them so special, it is just mind blowing, right? I don't think I even can put in words what it means because it was just
No,
it's
I'm getting chills just even hearing that story. And that I'm ready to meet these women, because I felt that about when you and I met. Um and I feel that hearing other incredible leaders such as yourself sharing those vulnerable type stories, I think helps so many people that, and I think it really shows to other people who want to look up to mentors and CEOs such as yourself, knowing that there's other ways. You don't have to sacrifice yourself. You don't have
No.
to sacrifice your values. You don't have to go down paths that maybe don't make you feel uncomfortable if your gut is going, I don't know if this is really the right path. Uh, and to really trust yourself, because there are women that now your path may not be exactly someone else's path, but just allowing someone to know that there's other paths, and that you can take what you're doing in balancing and still be as successful and impactful, not only in your life, but your footprint of your business out in the world.
The thing is, it gives you, it's a reaffirmation. It's a very, you have to have a personal, intense idea of why you want to do it. And the 10 of us, we all had our own why we're doing it. In my case, was the culmination of reconnecting with my identity. So I wanted to be back in nature. I wanted to have my time. Like I wanted to get healthy, in mind, in body, in soul. um, so it was, for me, it was a very complex thing in the sense of I want my identity back. For so many years, you build a business, you had a research lab, you have your kids, you're like doing everything for so many people, you build up a foundation, you just have so much. And then in the path, I lost me, right? So I needed, and the only way to find me was dedicating time to me. So, because if I wouldn't do it, then would not be able to succeed on the rest of the things. So it was very strong because for a year, well, maybe less, I would say 8 months, I had to train. I trained for 2 hours a day at least. And we will, have our own WhatsApp group with so many encouraging messages and videos. And I had to review my whole diet. And I had just to make time. And I needed to be disciplined every day, not miss it, one day after the other. And some days you're like really, really busy. Where are you going to get 2 hours? Right? It's like two
Yes,
hours, right?
yes.
But for example, I suddenly saw that I had a gym 50 meters from my house in this tiny fisherman town, and I didn't even know there was a gym because I was like so concerned. Well, what am I going to do when it rains? And my,
Right.
and my husband says, "But don't you know there's like a gym like right around the corner?" I was like, "Oh, really?" So it's. But this is just to show that sometimes we're so not looking, and then suddenly when you're open to your new challenge and you bring up your head and look around, things start coming to you, right? And my kids and my husband extremely supported. They were like, you need to go to the gym. And before, my way of thinking was, oh, I just can't go because the dinner and the kids, what would they think if I'm not home with them, the little time that I am home? So it's like all these like
Of
nonsense,
course.
all this nonsense self-talk that changed. And and then of course, the going to the mountain, the climbing, you know showing to my kids that it is possible. So it's not you say that you can do hard things, you do. you
You
know
do.
you do. You
I
do, and
absolutely
you do.
agree with that. Yeah, I
So
agree.
um and people laugh because I say, oh, it's just a walk in the park with no oxygen, right? So um
Yeah, I agree. I'm glad you really brought that up because it was very important for me. There was a time I was traveling a ton, and when COVID hit, a lot of people's work environment changes. So when I was traveling, I would make a point for the gym and doing the things that I could do to get some exercise. And when COVID hit, I love cycling. I'm an avid cyclist. I'm addicted to
Nice.
it, and it is I've always been very athletic, uh, but it's really important to me, and I made this promise to myself that I was going to, if I can make time for people in my schedule to talk business or life, I owe the same respect to myself,
Yeah.
and I should be able to put an hour and a half, whatever that is, to make an appointment with myself
Yeah.
and do whatever that is I want to do. And that time can change depending on how the day goes. But I make sure to make an appointment with myself. And I have found that that has made me happier. It has made me more focused. It has made me be able to balance my company, my family life, and everything else that gets thrown at you. And it's important to hear, and I'm glad that you mentioned that because you know when you get uh, to run a business such as yourself, and you're saying it is important to find that time for yourself, because we can say, and guilt is a demon,
Oh
and the
God, it's
self-talk that
terrible.
you talked about. And I think it's important to hear that, and this is so important of why I love doing this podcast, is to show dynamic women that we're human, and we all have this self talk that goes into our heads of why we can or why we shouldn't. And it's not making excuses, but uh, you're wanting to be there for so many people. And I think it's great that you were like, I can't be how I want to show up if I also don't take care of myself.
Yeah, but as I said, I had to like really touch bottom, to realize that, I
Yes.
needed to do something. The interesting piece, and people say, well, you just don't need to be that drastic. I needed to find an extreme.
Sometimes we do need to be that drastic to pay attention. Yeah.
So I was like, oh man, I need to find a very difficult thing to do, at least for me, in
Yes.
order to actually lose weight, get fit, have mental peace, and be at least for 9 days without internet. So,
You
you know,
needed a full shutdown.
absolutely, absolutely. And I needed a purpose. So we did a fundraising. So it was just climbing. We just needed to do a purpose. So we did a fundraising for institutions for education. So it was really cool. We raised, for me, it's quite a lot. We raised over 36,000. We went above and beyond our target. It was $30,000. We raised 36. And the coolest thing, it was like the night before summit. Sometimes you're walking on the mountains and suddenly your messages, boom, 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 they all come into
Of
your
course.
your your mobile phone. You can't talk. And one of my first investors, because everyone was like texting, how are you doing, how are you doing, he says, Veronica, good news, you've reached your target. So we reached our target on our fundraising the day
Couldn't-
before summit. Yeah,
So
yeah,
that again
yeah,
speaks to you and your
yeah,
leadership, that you're always
yeah,
giving first
yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
going
So
forward.
yes, yeah, yeah, that is very important, I believe.
That's
Yeah,
very important. I
yeah,
know we're getting close to time, and I'm if you have a few more minutes that you
absolutely.
could still give, I would be grateful to that. So thank you. I
Absolutely.
want I wanted to talk with you about, because I don't want to let it go, because I think it's so I think it speaks to you uh, in regards to the extrovert to introvert, and how that relates to your leadership.
So yeah, that's a great question. Um, so I learned that in order to have people join your mission, right? So you have to let them be, right? So the fact that I became more
Explain
of
to me a bit of let them be from your perspective, because I don't want to put my own thoughts around that, because that's
powerful.
that's a powerful uh, thing to say.
Yeah, so it really boils down to not controlling, right? So it's this is our mission. This is where we want to go. I trust that you will use your best judgment, your best will to actually move us towards the same direction. So the moment I am capable of letting people just be and do, that means that um, I am free of not having to control anything, because control is just not good, right? I can only control my actions and my reactions. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Not with everyone, but when you have
Right.
when you find the right fit, the right combination of people, you just trust that we're all guided by the same North Star, and each one will contribute with their uniqueness, with their know-how, and with their willingness to do something better of what it was when they started. And that only happens if I just let them be who they are, right? So in order
So
to do that,
let me ask you this, if I can. You present your technology to some conservative companies, to some non-conservative companies, um, and they're meeting you, the face behind this this level of. I think you know where I'm going. um,
mm,
with this incredible technology, and you are so introspective. Uh, how how are you perceived as that? Because I would say what you just talked about, and the releasing of the controlling, how would you put that into real life, in a real life example, if you have, with, let's just say, a very conservative company that is probably shocked that you're the face behind this
yeah,
incredible technology, right?
yeah, and I had some situations, I had situations. So this is how I reacted. So a couple of years ago, I was at an event, and we were talking with myself, some other person who was leading business development, and very well known in the gaming industry. And we were just sitting there, and in the meeting, they were all talking to him and not me, right? Because I'm a girl, probably, that doesn't know to play games, which is very wrong. I play a lot of games. And and then suddenly in the middle of the conversation, the business developer had to turn around and say, well, actually, she's the one that decides. You should be talking to Veronica. And so I still, I might need to improve, but I'm still the quiet one in the room. When there is more people, I'm more the one that listens. And I know I need to do some improvement. I need to kind of like step out a bit more, probably. Um, but I only kind of like do that when I feel the person on the other side is receptive, right?
Sure.
So I just try to read the room, and if the other person is receptive, then you step up, and that bond of trust kind of like just happens. I'm very technical, and I learn to just, sometimes have to introduce myself because it's fair to the company. This is what I learned. If I don't show up, then I'm being unfair to the work that all my team is doing. So I had to learn to say, yeah, I'm going to be the general submission chair for SIGGRAPH next year. And then I don't need to say much more because people already understand how big that is. So, or I presented at SIGGRAPH, or I did a TEDx talk. So I just kind of like in the middle of the conversation, just I mentioned one or two things. And then it eases down. That's how I managed to kind of like start showing up without taking the attention of everyone else in the room. And I also learned to bring in my meetings the CTO, the technical director, that they know a lot, even though I'm very technical. And I let them be, and show up and shine. And then if needed, I just come in again. But the more my team do great, the better it is. So if they show up, then well, I don't need to, and that's
So
okay
you
too.
kind of allow your leadership, which I think is really great. You you it is okay for you as the CEO
Yeah,
to be behind the scenes,
yeah,
and you're there to support whenever the support needs to be. And you have hired great people to surround you and the company,
yeah,
and you are unselfish by allowing them to shine for the greater good of the company.
yeah.
And I find that not to be a weakness at all.
Oh, no, no, no.
That is
Yeah,
knowing that's knowing um, where your strengths and where there's a better opportunity for someone else to serve the client or the company.
yeah, absolutely. So for example, we were completely unblocking our sales pipeline. And as soon as I start bringing our CTO and our technical director to the meetings, we started unblocking customers. You know, so if someone else can do something that I cannot do, then that's fine, because now the company grew to a point that I don't even know all the in details of the technology. So they talk, level to level when they're in the meetings, and that is just, I'm delighted to be in those calls because I keep on learning, right? Which is
Yes,
magnificent. Yeah,
yes, yes,
yeah,
yes.
yeah,
That
yeah,
that's amazing. And I
yeah,
think the other thing I heard you say, and please feel free to correct my perspective if it's not what you meant to imply. But and I'll paraphrase. But I think when you said that you're the chair of SIGGRAPH, and congratulations.
yeah. General
That
submission. It's general
general submission.
submission. Yeah,
Yes, thank
yeah,
you for
yeah,
correcting. Yes,
yeah.
thank you for correcting me on that. Yes, but in hearing you say that, either there's nothing you really need to prove about that. So if someone wants to talk with you about it, then I kind of feel like they should do some research about what that is to have that conversation with you. And that's not something I think, you know, you feel you need to really kind of uh, convince people of, that brings that level of importance, because people in your circle are already going to know about that
Yeah,
importance. There's nothing necessarily you need to prove, if that
that's
makes
correct.
sense.
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, yeah,
I
and it
love that.
has, yeah, and it has other connotations because this conference, one of my favorites one for the year, because it's all about sharing know-how, is sharing the state of the art of technology. So it's where researchers and innovators present their work, and it's extremely competitive to get your work published at SIGGRAPH. So and it aligns with also my values, in terms of you don't get paid; it's just all volunteering work, and you're just sharing your new innovations with the world. And for me, it's kind of like closing the circle. I'm so grateful for this opportunity because it's by invitation. And when I finished my PhD, I published at SIGGRAPH my research, my PhD. So
Congratulations.
thank you. So that was 15, 18 years ago, and now it's kind of like closing
A
the
full circle.
circle. Yeah,
Yeah.
So the least I could do is just be so grateful for, for giving back and working um, on building the conference for this year, actually. So, which will be in the summer. Because it's just an amazing opportunity. It takes a lot of time, but it's just an amazing opportunity. So yeah, and people know. So going back to what you say, is people already know. You don't need to explain. So there's other connotations behind, volunteering for SIGGRAPH at any level, anyone that volunteers, but as a reviewer, everyone deserves a recognition, because it means that you're sharing knowledge and understanding, which is an amazing thing.
No,
Um,
it's an amazing and a beautiful thing, and the
yeah,
organization is very, very
yeah,
lucky to have you and all
mm,
the other people that are part of that organization.
mm,
And again, I think it really sums up the podcast and in regards to you're always about giving first and giving forward. And that's
yeah,
really truly what you are all about. And
mm.
I really got a glimpse of that when we first met. And
Thank
then
you.
I really see how that really embodies you personally and within your business as I got
Mm,
to know you.
thank
Uh,
you.
I I want to set some just some time to give you the floor a bit, where I like to ask my speakers if they have any questions for me, or if there's sort of a something that you felt like you wanted to summarize a bit more for our listeners with what you talked about throughout the podcast, sort of a kind of a something to leave them with that they can instill into their companies and in their life. So I like to just give just a few moments, since I've been asking you all the wonderful, wonderful questions, and in case there's something where like, oh, I wish I said, I want to give you that opportunity.
Oh, I don't know if you find it interesting. I can share my analogy of what building a business or being an entrepreneur is,
Oh,
because
please.
I think that relates to both of us.
It
So
relates to definitely both of us. Yes.
so, so yeah, well, we're both avid skiers, as I learned, right?
Yes.
So we love
Big avid
skiing,
skiers.
big avid skiers. Yeah. So I when long ago someone asked me what does being an entrepreneur means. So I go back to this very experience that I had. So for me, it's like skiing, right? So a couple of years, well, actually many years ago, I was in South America, in Argentina, skiing in Las Leñas, and I took out the chairlift to the highest peak, and with a friend, we walked for like an hour around the mountain. And then when we were on the other side, we were like standing, and our whole body could actually touch the snow, right? So yeah, and it was, oh, I forgot to say the day is like sunny, like really sunny. The one thing is that every time I would look up, I would lose balance. And so I was like, oh my God. And so my friend says, no, you just gotta fixate one point so you don't lose balance. And I was like, how the hell are we gonna get down? And he's like, no problem. It's just like jumping into the pool. You just jump and go down. And I was like, holy Jesus. I'm like, okay. So that's what we did, right? So you're standing up on the top with your body touching the snow. Imagine it's very vertical. And the only thing you can do is just look down, spot one place, one destination, which will be like your goal or your objective. Then mentally design up a path. It's like a straight path, but the only thing is like when you jump, you have to do one turn after the other. And in each turn, you gotta be really careful because you don't know how the snow is gonna be. You cannot make it too hard because you might fall and the ski will get stuck. If you do it too light, you lose balance. And you go one turn at a time until hopefully you just arrive to your destination. So for me, being an entrepreneur or building Didimo is like that same feeling. It's no fear whatsoever. you only have your own skills, right? So, like going down the mountains, you can only rely on your own skills. And every turn, it's an unexpected situation. So, building the business is the same. Got to have a clear path, a clear goal, and understand that every turn you make, something challenging is going to happen, which you don't know which one it is. It's uncertain, absolutely. And the only thing you have is your own self. So, yep, that's what for me building a business is. And
And we talked about that analogy, and I loved it. One, because I can absolutely relate to that, and I have been in my own vertical moments on some skis, not as intense as that, but it sort of also it just resonated with me so much, and it doesn't stop. You can
mm,
get down that mountain, but you know that there could be another mountain again as an entrepreneur, and the same analogy would still apply.
absolutely, absolutely. It's one summit after the other, right?
Yeah.
So,
That
and
that is a perfect summary.
yeah,
That's a perfect summary.
mm,
Veronica, thank you so much.
absolutely.
I absolutely appreciate your time and your willingness to participate on this podcast today.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolutely pleasure. And yeah, let's just be true to our values and
I
continue.
agree. I agree. That wraps up today's episode of Unconversations. A huge thank you to our guest, Veronica, for sharing such valuable insights and engaging in unconventional unconversation with us. Join us for our next episode as we showcase and draw motivation from remarkable leaders like Veronica, who are shaping the definitions of success and leadership. I'm Dr. Allison Schmidt, and thank you for listening to Unconversations. If you love this episode, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. Until then, keep challenging the norm and striving in excellence in all that you do. Veronica, thank you so much again. I
Thank
am
you.
absolutely grateful for your time.
Thank you.